Hey kids, and welcome back to Sunday School. Today, I'm gonna need you to put your helmets on because we're going through some construction sites. That's right, today's parable is the parable of the wise and the foolish builder. But before we start, have you ever considered yourself to be a full Christian? Like, are you a Christian? Yes. Do you go to church? Yes. Do you attend Sunday school? Yes. But how do you let others know you're a Christian without actually telling them that you're a Christian? Well, let's find out, shall we? Presenting to you the parable of the two builders. Well, Jesus wanted us to teach about how important it is to obey him, and for that, he now has two characters, Mr. A and Mr. B, who are searching for places to build their house. Mr. A already has an instruction manual, while Mr. B just copies his manual and hopes to go build a house. In Mr. A's manual, there are things that say how a house should and should not be built. And he looks over to Mr. B, who's already started building on the sand, which the book says not to. But Mr. B doesn't care. He continues building. How should Mr. A tell Mr. B that it's wrong and that his house might be destroyed? Anyways, he starts searching for land which has a stone foundation, and luckily he found some, so he begins digging up to make sure the foundation's good. Soon they will have a visitor, but for now, Mr. A has just finished digging the foundation. And as he goes to grab his tools, he sees Mr. B. Whoa, Mr. B is really fast. Now, I wonder who this guy will praise when he sees Mr. A or Mr. B. Oh, he congratulates Mr. B. Well, his house is done anyways. What has Mr. A done? But Mr. B's house is on unstable ground, and so it forms holes. He's got to hide the holes. Plaster it. Maybe nobody will see it. And plaster some more. And plaster and plaster. Well, that's how their day went. Now the next day, Mr. B is already starting to paint his house. Fast, isn't he? But Mr. A is still laying bricks. Mr. B is already putting on his doors. What about Mr. A? Oh, Mr. B's house has some cracks already. Well, just hide it with a pot, huh? But Mr. A confronts him again. You must build it on stony ground, he says. But the work's very less done. I should just keep it away. With all the sun in his face, he still works really hard to finish up the plastering, while Mr. B already even has a sunroof so that he can sit out there and enjoy his lemonade. Mr. A is working really hard, isn't he? Mr. B just wants to have some fun. Let me throw some stones. One there, another one, and another one. Oops, it hurts. Well, he just sits off and dozes the day away. Oh, Mr. A's finished with his door. Now he can get into the house that he has finished. A job well done. But that night, there seems to be a disturbance in the weather. There was thunder and lightning, and the clouds seemed to get heavy. Raindrops began to fall. And just at that instant, all his belongings on the roof went away, and water began to flow from out of nowhere into their area. And now, since his house wasn't built on a rock, but rather on sand, when the water came upon the sand, the sand was washed away, and in the process, the sand took the house away too, because it wasn't a strong foundation. And Mr. B lost his house overnight. Now morning comes, and Mr. A is just ready to get off of his bed. Go open the window, take in the fresh air, and oh, what does he see? His neighbor's house is destroyed. Are you okay? It's okay. We need to follow instructions, you know. Here's the book. Mr. B reads the instructions, only to find out it's the Bible. And it's an instruction on how to build our lives. Really, this story tells us that. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And that was the parable. Now we have to search for what we can learn from it. Remember, I asked you a question earlier of how you can let others know you're a Christian without telling them you're a Christian? There's only one way, and it's called action. Actions come from thoughts. Now, both Mr. A and B had the same thought. They wanted to build a house, right? But what was different was the actions that followed. Mr. A built his house on the rock, while Mr. B built his house on the sand. In today's world, Mr. B is that person who builds his house on his insecurities, which means he goes to God only when he feels scared or hurt or alone and stuff like that. They only go to search for verses that make them feel better when they're feeling down. Have you ever been a Mr. B? Going to God only when you feel a certain type of way, just so God can make you feel better? That's like building your house on the sand. Eventually, when stronger problems come, you will forget God and your entire foundation will be destroyed because you are too focused on your problems to look at the one who can solve all your problems. But Mr. A is not like that. Mr. A relies on God day and night. And even if something bad comes his way, like his car broke down or he didn't do well in life, he knows that God is still going to take care of him. And that is the different action that Mr. A shows us that tells us he's a Christian without him telling us, literally, that he's a Christian. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Now, let's get into the activity.